YouTube fam. So it's Francina Simone, and I decided that I'm going to kind of take some of the discussions out of the reading vlogs and upload those separately. I like things to be organized. I don't know. I like looking at my video and being like, I know exactly what's in that. And when I look at the vlogs, I'm just like, I don't even know what I had for breakfast, let alone what happened in that week. So this is my attempt at cleaning my channel up a bit. So I want to talk a little bit about whether hype is ruining YA or not, because over the last few years, especially since publishing companies have really started getting like in tune with booktube community, we've gotten an Instagram, we've gotten like a ton of publicity for a lot of different books, and I love that aspect of it because I think, you know, celebrating books is probably the best thing that we can do. However, I am afraid that the overhype of things has caused some type of discontent within our community. Most of the criticism that YA booktube gets is that, you know, all we do is talk about YA, all we do is talk about the same books, and if we're honest, none of them have really been hitting the way that the hype kind of leads us to believe that it will. And I think honestly, it's a problem that stems from something completely different. And I think that problem is the fact that in young adult we don't have subgenres. And I will link these two ideas because I know that sounds completely like left field. But what I think the problem that we have in YA is, unlike the adult genre, if you go to adult fantasy, you can find urban fantasy, you can find science fiction, which will be under the fantasy section. You can find like tons and tons and tons of articles and or bloggers and stuff that really highlight all of the subgenres that are in fantasy. If you want Tolkien-esque style fantasy, you can find people and like little fandoms and knits that really cultivate those types of things. And if you want something a little bit more modern or a little bit more, I don't know, contemporary with your fantasy, like you can find all sorts of people who really just like cultivate those kinds of things. And there are many authors who kind of travel in hubs that kind of cultivate those types of genres within their genre. And we don't really have that in young adult. I think that's kind of for many reasons, one of which is that young adult readers tend not to like read for genre. We read what's popular and what is hitting, you know, what's relatable, what's interesting. And that doesn't matter if it's a fantasy. It doesn't matter if it's a high concept fantasy, you know, with lots of political scheming. It doesn't matter whether it's a romance fantasy. It doesn't matter whether it's urban fantasy or whether it has vampires, that it's a contemporary where the girl is suffering with her mom having cancer. Like, it doesn't matter what it is. We'll read it because, like, we're awesome readers like that. We read across all genres. We don't really kind of, like, get bogged down by just what we inherently like. However, I do think that publishing is missing an opportunity when it comes to cultivating genres, because the issue that we have is there's a big group of us, just this huge wave of readers who don't really know what to read next or why or really like how to kind of, we're left having to cultivate our own bookshelves versus, you know, kind of having these little subcultures to really help us do it and to really help us figure out our reading taste and what we like, and, you know, to be able to jump back and forth and say, well, I don't really like that one, let me try this subculture. So like, I think the reason why I'm really thinking about this a lot lately is because vampires are coming back. I was really interested in reading Renee Audier's new vampire book that she announced maybe a few months ago, and it just got me to thinking like, oh, vampires are back. And then I was like, well, why did they ever leave? Like, tons of people still love reading vampire books. Like, go to Amazon. Tons of people buy vampire books, paranormal books, werewolves, all of that kind of stuff. But in YA, after the Twilight kind of trend died down, they were like, okay, no more paranormal. Like, we need to buy something else. And I think it comes back to hype. And this is how I'm linking these things. Instead of cultivating a genre like, oh, people love Twilight, let's cultivate more paranormal type books and let's explore the paranormal genre and cultivate subcultures within that subculture. Like, instead of really like exploring that and helping to build that within the book community, it was like publishing was like, oh no, we've got to find the next big thing. And we had Hunger Games, we had Divergent, we had Twilight, we had Harry Potter, and all of those things were huge and created a big bust in the YA community. Like, I believe between 2007 and 2012, like, the number of books published in a year doubled when it came to YA books. And that's because YA readers were like, we're here for it. Give me more, give me more, give me more. However, there wasn't that next big story. Like, I think The Fault in Our Stars was a big one for contemporary. And, you know, like, even though now we have a lot of books to movie adaptations, there isn't one that's hitting so big that it sends ripples through, like, everything. We have a lot of book to movie adaptations going on now, but, like, there is no fandom, like legit fandom for these things. And I think that's what young adult misses. Like, we all remember, if you were around back in the heyday, what it was like to go to the movie theater when, like, a Twilight like movie came out. Like, I didn't even like Twilight like that, and I still went to support my sister-in-law, who was like, she loved it and she liked it at the time. And I went to the movie theaters to watch a movie, like, even though I knew it was gonna be, like, kind of trash. I was still there for it, and everybody else was there too. Everybody had on their t-shirts, and everybody was talking about it and waiting for it, and everybody loved the idea and the fandom around Twilight. And the same thing with the Hunger Games. Like, I was there for Hunger Games. I was there for it. I was there for Mockingjay Part 1, Part 2. When the trailer came out, I was like, oh my god. And, you know, like, people who never read the books and people who don't even walk into bookstores know about these movies and know about these stories, and they're really into it. They love it. And there hasn't been a book like that in young adult for quite some time. I think Divergent might have been one of the last ones, and I don't think it's because, like, nobody's writing great stuff. I think it more so has to do a lot with how we hype books. Like, now that publishing is really getting on the marketing train, finally, it's like, now that they're finally, like, getting on the idea of hype and of, like, getting buzz about books and things like that, it's a weird kind of relationship, because a lot of these things are buzzed based off of the hope that a whole bunch of teenagers and a whole bunch of mainly teenage girls and women will go out and hype this thing up and go for it and turn it into the next big thing. And it's like, okay, first of all, chill. Don't play with my emotions like that. I'll turn the next big thing into a next big thing if I know what this is first. One of the big things that I have with, like, one of the big problems that I have with hype, especially on BookTube, is, you know, this new book is coming out. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody's saying good things about it. But I have no fucking clue, one, what this book is about. Two, the hype and the book itself don't match. Like, they'll be like, if you love Hunger Games, you'll love this. And then I read it and I'm like, this is nothing like the atmosphere or the idea of Hunger Games. I think they just wanted people who read Hunger Games to read this book, because lots of people read Hunger Games and they want lots of people to read this book. And the fact that there's no other correlation got me feeling some kind of way. Instead, if we cultivated subgenres and really highlighted people who love, you know, love triangles, love to hate relationships, like villain love interest, people who love these things will love these types of books. I think we will get that fandom kind of back again. That feeling that you got when, you know, you and your homies went out to watch a Harry Potter movie for the last time and everybody was crying. And then you walking out of the theater with your tears and your Hogwarts hat and your Hogwarts scarf and your robes and everything was a mess. I mean, like, we'll recreate that, but maybe on a smaller level. And I know that the point of hype is to get that big thing again and to get it, like, you know, the next big thing in YA, because we really want something to be excited about, to, like, have those same types of feelings and to generate, obviously, the moolah. But I think if we cultivated and really focus on cultivating subgenres and not, like, killing things because they're not on trend, people would be much happier in their reading experiences. Because, let me put it this way. I love fantasy, and I love Game of Thrones type fantasies, and I love romance fantasies like Throne of Glass. I have my issues with Throne of Glass, but those aside, if you're just trying to hype me up on Throne of Glass because you know that Game of Thrones just came out and everybody's up on that and the titles are kind of the same and you trying to ride that hype train, like, if you love fantasies and kick-ass girls, you should read this book, I'm gonna be kind of mad, because the first book in Throne of Glass is nothing like a high concept fantasy. It's very much like a romance book placed in a fantasy world with some interesting fantasy elements. And it's not straight romance, like, it's got some political intrigue and stuff like that, but the plot is so, like, it's so accessible, bare minimum, when it comes to high concept, that if you were shopping me Game of Thrones, I might slap you, bitch, because you're not delivering it. And that's not even the fault of the book, because the book by itself, I enjoyed the romance and the messiness aspect. I just wish that I knew that that's what I was getting when I was going into it. But if you're over here telling me that I'm going to get some Game of Thrones, you know, like we're not meeting up. And given that I'm a reader of both, it's so detrimental because something I could have loved, I no longer do because it was fed to me and based on false pretenses, based on trying to build hype, trying to get people who like this and this and this and this all up on this one thing, instead of just delivering the book to the people who would read it regardless and who like it because that's what they're looking for, and letting them build it up and then letting them get me excited for it because you know what, girl, I love me some messy drama in my fantasies. I love some romance. Let me read that, and then bam, it hits me good, and boom, it's a long series. I'm in for the long haul. And you know, like sometimes when I think back, I think that's the thing that kind of set me off with Throne of Glass in the first place, is I had no idea what I was getting into. I thought I was going to get into some assassin girl who is out here killing motherfuckers like boom, 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 left and right, boom, mess with me. This is fantasy world. And I got Selena Sardothian. And the problem is that, you know what, under the right circumstances, if she was delivered to me as like, girl, I'm a pretty foo-foo, I like me some dresses, I don't really even like killing people, but you know, it's kind of like the thing that I do sometimes. Like if someone had given it to me like that and I'd have been like, let me see what this bitch is up to, I'd like her. We'd have chilled a lot better than what I did. And you know, and sometimes I get upset about that because that was my reading experience that was tainted by the hype train. The hype train that did not deliver what it was supposed to deliver. And I know that that's also just miscommunication and mismarketing and trying to just, you know, like really shoot shit at the wall and hope that it sticks. That's not the saying, but it's close enough. But I think it's so detrimental. And instead, if we just cultivated those subgenres and said, you know, people who love these types of fantasies, this is a specific type of fantasy. This is the label that we're putting on this. And we're going to build it up based on that. I think that we would have a lot more excitement, and the lull between the big books wouldn't be so bad. You know what I mean? Like I can wait for another Harry Potter. I can wait for another Hunger Games and Divergent. Something that's so big that it just transcends everybody. You know, the author transcends the story. It transcends, you know, like people, because we're all in this world together. Like I can wait for that, but we can make the wait so much more better if we just cultivated those trends and those genres and made reading enjoyable for the people who want to enjoy it, instead of just, you know, like going after trends and shit. So I guess that's the question I'm posing to you guys. What do you think? Do you think that hype is like a detriment to YA, that it's like causing more problems than it solves when it comes to marketing? Or like, do you think subgenres are lame? Like you just want to know if it's in the fantasy section, or you want to know if it's just like, you know, contemporary, and you don't care across the board. You read anything regardless or whatever. Like your opinion matters, and I'm actually interested. Like this is just my opinion because it's just something that I see and I was just intrigued by. So guys, with that, I'm going to let you go, and let me know your thoughts down below. Don't forget to subscribe and like the channel for a bitch, and I will see you guys later. T2 Wales, it's all for now. Bye!